Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Hello. Welcome back. Hi. If you guys are here and ready to go, drop a message in the chat as always. Hello. I've put in some links as well. So the first one is make sure you've signed up for the Polkadot Hackathon that's starting next week. So I put in the link there in the chat. If you haven't already signed up, please do. It will be amazing. Secondly, so today's session is going to be led by Radha. I think he's already saying, putting messages in the chat. Awesome. Hello. And we will be talking about the ecosystem and governance. Here we go. Here's Radha now. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Awesome. All right. I will stop speaking now and hand it over.
Okay, so let me share my screen first and then get started. Perfect. So let's start with, the first of all, like we just finished like a event in India. It was a great experience. I'm sure there are participants from India in this, um, you know, Encode series as well. But yeah, I just want to say the Polkadot India event was actually funded through Treasury, through on-chain governance. And today's talk is like very relevant in sort of like, scaling all the efforts related to Polkadot and ecosystem. So I'm very glad to be introducing, how the governance works and how you as, someone in the ecosystem can participate in governance and make cool things sort of happen. So I'm Radhakrishna Dasari. I'm the technical education lead at Web3 Foundation. My primary objective at Web3 Foundation is to scale Polkadot education. So let's get started. And before we dive into the governance concepts, I just want to reiterate like Web3 Foundation's vision, which is basically, we personally believe in a decentralized and fair internet where users control their own data, identity, as well as destiny. And so these are pretty bold, things out there that I put on the slide. How do we achieve that? So the entire Polkadot's like architecture, its principles, its governance, everything is tied into making this vision a reality. So not any presentation goes without me introducing what Polkadot is technically, because I feel if you don't get this, you don't get like, what Polkadot actually is. So Polkadot, it's the first production grade heterogeneous sharded, like, multi-chain protocol. So what this means is we have like Polkadot, which is a blockchain, and then you have all these blockchains which are running in parallel on top of Polkadot. So because they're running in parallel blockchains are parachains. So you have all these parachains on Polkadot that are secured by Polkadot, as well as Polkadot assists them to talk to each other. So these blockchains are connected and secured by Polkadot through pooled security and interoperability. So now that's the key, technical theme of like Polkadot. For those of you who are like fairly non-technical, you can think of Polkadot as a set of blockchains so that are working together and talking to each other securely. All right. Now, for anyone in like the Web3 space or blockchain space, the fundamental thing that everybody believes in or has faith in is that code is law. So the only reason people tend to look at blockchains is that first of all, like blockchain is a data structure that lets you set things in stone, and it should work as expected because people actually look at the code and say, okay, confidently and deterministically that this is going to happen. If I give this input, deterministically this will be the output. So that's what gives like the blockchain and Web3 this level of trust or trustlessness in a way. So code is law, um, but the thing is, again, there are blockchains out there that haven't changed their code since their inception, but every major blockchain has gone through like some changes at the protocol level, right? So including Bitcoin, Ethereum, recently the Ethereum merge. So times change, people change, laws change as well. So the same thing applies to blockchain as well. We don't know what the future holds in terms of like technology. There should be a way to update the laws, right? So think of all the governments out there in the world, right? So you have these countries which are like democracies, which have a constitution, which defines like what's lawful, what's unlawful, and they have governance structures, right? So they have governance structures that draft the proposals to change the laws, and then they have executive bodies that sort of execute and implement those laws. So what I'm leading towards is blockchain governance, right? So if you treat blockchain as an ecosystem, it's a community of people working trustlessly with each other. You need some form of governance structures to change the laws of the blockchain itself. So for that, what Polkadot does is, so Polkadot is a blockchain, right? So for all the blockchains out there, there are blockchain building frameworks. For Polkadot, it's called like Substrate, which lets you develop like these customized blockchains. So Substrate lets you develop blockchains with like features, and it also allows for those features to be updated and upgraded. Now, substrate-based blockchains have what's called a runtime. So you can think of runtime as the brains of the blockchain. So this is where the core state transition logic of the blockchain is. Now, Substrate allows you to customize it at every level. You can actually drag and drop what is already out there. So Substrate and Polkadot, everything is like open source, right? So you have libraries that you can import and sort of put it in the brains. Now, the Polkadot architecture, like Substrate, also allows for you to change this runtime logic. So basically, a Polkadot node or a Substrate node, it's powered by these three core technologies. Grandpa is like for finality, not relevant for today's talk. Lib peer-to-peer is for networking, fine. What we are very interested in today's talk's context is the WebAssembly. So WebAssembly is the technology that lets you, run the whole logic of the blockchain, this runtime logic, as a WASM blob. Now, if we want to make any changes, let's say we identified some bug and then we want to make an update to it. Let's say we want to add an entirely new feature to the Polkadot blockchain. There is an option for you to replace this blockchain runtime with a new one. It's almost like swapping the brains of the blockchain. So WebAssembly is the one that allows for doing this. And this has like major implications in terms of like governance. So this is what makes Polkadot a meta protocol. By meta protocol, I mean a protocol that can actually update itself. That's what brings us to this governance to execution pipeline. So what happens is Polkadot nodes run software, which in turn runs as a blob or a WASM bytecode, which is what I mentioned earlier. So this WASM bytecode has all the logic that is needed to execute for the blockchain. So the beauty of this is that this WASM blob is part of the blockchain. So Polkadot blockchain, so every single block has that core state transition logic. Let's say at block 104, this upgrade has happened. So the governance proposal got voted yes, and it gets enacted at block 104. and the code of the blockchain itself is swapped. So the next block produced by the validators is going to use the updated code to, to, to produce like the next block. So nowhere you're going to see forking. So in blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum or any sort of blockchains that don't use this sort of feature, so they undergo a hard fork. So a hard fork is like, so let's say at this point, um, a blockchain like Ethereum, okay, so has made like an upgrade, and then it sends out like communication through like social media or listservs, emails, or direct contact or whatever. So they have to do a lot of uh, coordination in telling the nodes to update their software, and the ones who don't update their software, they're going to you know create this fork. They're going to run on a different chain than the ones um, that are upgraded. So this is a problem. So hard forks is a common problem blockchains deal with. So I already mentioned Polkadot cleverly surpasses that hard forking issue by keeping the code part of the blockchain, and with governance, this code gets like swapped, and as it is part of the blockchain, it's automatically communicated to all the nodes that are participating in the network protocol. Everybody has that blob to create the next block. And that's the beauty of Polkadot's on-chain governance. So any sort of proposal made on chain gets voted, and when it is enacted, it is automatic. And that's what makes Polkadot like future proof. And the reason why I am highlighting this so much is that you would have heard of the recent events that are happening elsewhere in the Web3 space. So Rob, who is like the co-founder of Polkadot, just tweeted it today. Um, the meme speaks for itself, right? So on Polkadot, vote is complete and the transaction gets executed. On the other chains, which don't implement this sort of like on-chain governance, this sort of sophisticated on-chain governance that Polkadot has, they have to create like a voting somewhere off-chain. They get a result, and then you have to wait for the actual developers to follow what's actually written there, right? So this is not how uh, Polkadot imagine on-chain governance to be, and it has been on the forefront, having this sophisticated governance structure that allows for you to update the code along with upload the code along with your proposal. Everybody looks at what the changes are going to be, and then they're going to vote on them. And once the vote is successful, the chain gets upgraded. All right, and what else do we have to make our life easy on Polkadot ecosystem? We have what's called a canary network, which is Kusama. So canary network is not a test network. There are plenty of test nets for Polkadot, where you can do anything almost for free. So Kusama, if you want to do something, so Kusama token has value. So the availability of this canary network is going to ensure things like governance, right? So how do you test governance features on a test net? It doesn't make sense. You have to put it out there in the open, in the real world for real issues, and see how the users are going to react to it, what kind of things they can take advantage of. You should always imagine an adversarial environment, and Kusama sort of provides that, right? So it has a real community, it has the token has real value, and the network has some real problems that it's trying to solve. So yeah, so the summary of all of this is that Polkadot is one of those chains that does total on-chain governance, right? So if you go to Polkadot.js user interface, you see under governance, you see these tabs. So we have democracy, that is where people can propose like referenda, proposals that actually go for like vote. Excuse me. So we have council. So council is the special body of members who are elected by the Polkadot token holders. So right now there are like 13 council members on Polkadot, I guess. But a short how would I put it? Um, Trailer that I want to give here is the council is disappearing. With the next upgrade of governance, which we call OpenGov. So this sort of a centralized body of like 13 members is going to disappear from Polkadot. So the other major thing with governance is treasury, right? So blockchains like Polkadot and Kusama, both of them have treasury with like DOT and KSM tokens. How do these funds get used, right? So, like I mentioned, the Polkadot India conference that I was part of over the weekend, it was funded by the Treasury. And why? What was the theme of the conference? It was for the benefit of Polkadot ecosystem as a whole, right? So in a way, the network is funding itself. Yeah, the network is sort of self-perpetuating its growth. So that's happening through Treasury, and this also requires some kind of oversight. We don't want to fund like initiatives or events that are totally fake, or they don't follow the vision of the network itself, which I mentioned earlier. We want to create like a fair, decentralized like internet. So that treasury is also like managed totally on chain. um, yeah, so the total, when I say totally managed on chain, the disbursement of the funds and everything. So, and then we have like bounties. So bounties are for, you have like these, think of like events, right? So events, it makes sense to have a bounty rather than you creating a treasury proposal for every single Polkadot event. Let's allocate like a pot of funds to the bounty, and then you have, which is managed by like a multi-sig, a group of people, curators, who is going to like review all the events proposals, and then from that pot of money they're going to disperse like the funds for events. So we have bounties like that. We have education bounty, we have anti-scam bounty, all of those managed on through like governance. And finally, we have like technical committee. So technical committee is a group of entities that is going to take care about the core network protocol issues with it. Like, let's say we found a bug on Polkadot protocol. We need like someone to act swiftly and then propose changes to the network, and technical committee is the one that does that. So you, as a dot token holder, you can contribute to the future of Polkadot in several ways. So one is you can propose a referendum on your own. So today we're going to see how to do that. There is a way for you to prioritize public referenda. So let's say you see 10 different proposals, and there is a proposal that really matters to you. There is a way for you to endorse that proposal and give it more weight, to be on top of like that waiting list queue. You could do that, and then you can also like vote on all the active referenda. So let's say these proposals become like referenda and they're up for vote. You're able to say yes or no to those. All right. So, and you can also vote for the council members. So let's say you find an individual or like an organization that is contesting for the council, aligning with your ideals or your thought process. There is a way for you to allocate your dot tokens to electing them as a council member. And even further, like you can also become a council member. So this is what uh, dot token gets you in terms of like governance in a nutshell. And whatnot, like Polkadot also implements this unique feature that gives minorities, a way to make their voice heard. So why is this important? We have what's called like conviction weighted voting, which is again like unique to like Polkadot. Uh, Based on like your tokens, you can also include like some sort of conviction with it. So let's say I'm giving an example here. Let's say there's Peter who's voting no with like 10 dot with 128-week lock period. So that's like a lot of conviction. Peter is willing to lock his dot tokens for a longer period. So this gives Peter like 60 votes, so gives a lot of weight for Peter's like decision, whereas the other two have like 20 dot and 15 dot, but they're not having as much conviction as Peter in terms of uh, the outcome of this particular referenda. So together combine, even though someone has like very less dots, they're able to define the fate of the network through conviction. And why is this important? Think of like people with a lot of tokens. So you may think they'll exert a lot of influence on the network. So if that person with a lot of dot is not really caring about like the outcome of a referenda, they typically vote with like a conviction, the default conviction, which is 0.1. So if someone has 1,000 dot and then they don't care like about the outcome and they don't have a conviction on that, they'll just be voting with 0.1 conviction, and that will make the 1,000 dot just like 100 dot. And yeah, so you get the idea. So this conviction voting sort of gives people with less amount of dot more weightage when there is an issue that is affecting them. All right, so I'm sure there are a few questions about this, for you. We'll discuss about them at the end of this talk again. All right, so electing the council. Like I mentioned, the dot tokens can also be used for electing the council members. So this is done just the way like how you elect like validators, which is like a multi-body election. Those methods are used for electing the council members too. So so based on your vote allocations, the protocol decides like who will be part of the council, and the council comes with certain privileges. So for instance, if you as a non-council member, start like a public referenda, it has to go through what's called a supermajority approval. So there is an equation here. I don't want to bother you with it. I'll just give you an intuition of what exactly this means. So let's say we put a proposal out. So I put a proposal out. I'm not a council member. So the proposal is up for vote as a referenda. Now, let's say 25% of the total dot token issuance is participating in this referenda. Then this proposal needs like 66% of yes to be able to like pass. Okay, so as the token participation increases with time, so let's say when the turnout is 75%, 54% need to say yes, and when the token participation is like 100%, let's say hypothetically everybody on chain is voting on an issue, so this just becomes like 50% threshold, right? So so the issue this is going to like tackle is that initially, like when there are no votes, the supermajority approve requires your proposal to have like a large approval, like 90% or 95% should say yes, and as the voter turnout keeps increasing, it falls down to the the 50% threshold, like how it should be. Now this is like difficult for public referenda than when you compare with like council referenda, which follows like supermajority reject. So the council, when they introduce like a referenda, that referenda already has some level of inertia, because the council is a body that is elected by the large dot token like holders. So when they introduce a proposal, it looks like they have a bit of like advantage. Even if like 34% of voters say yes, with the turnout of 25%, the proposal is still going to pass successfully. So the super majority reject is sort of counting in the weightage from people who have already elected the council. And as you can see, if people are not like, the users are not really happy with what council did, they have a choice again to make their voice heard. And as the turnout keeps increasing, the threshold again reaches like 50%. So but yeah, so compared to like a public referendum, the council introduced like referenda has like a advantage. And and yeah, so good news is that if you think that this is sort of unfair, the council is sort of disappearing in the next edition of governance. The OpenGov is going to eliminate the whole concept of council there, and you can see that, right? So which Polkadot, wherever there are like these decentralization principles that are not like being met, Polkadot protocol is actually moving towards the direction where it becomes like more and more decentralized. So let's talk about like treasury. Again, like right now, the treasury is being, in a way, the council acts like a guardian of the treasury. So uh, they are able to like make these motions, which sort of, if the council sort of approves those motions, the treasury funds are sort of spent. Um, Even the community, if you don't want to go through the council, there is a way for you to start like a public referendum and put it out to the vote as well. So it's not like it's only the council members who control the treasury. So it's also the public. And the treasury mainly is funded through transaction fees on the network, block rewards, staking inefficiencies. So there is a dedicated like ideal staking rate that is defined by the network. Any sort of fluctuation on either side is going to send funds to the treasury. And also, like if there is like a slashing on the network, if the validators behave poorly, um, or maliciously, the funds backing those validators are going to be slashed, and those slashed funds are deposited to the treasury. Yeah, so I talked about like technical committee earlier. These are the core protocol developers. So right now, even technical committee is sort of centralized. If you take a look at its members, so Web3 Foundation, which I'm part of, is like one member, and you have like two accounts from Parity, who are like the core implementers of Polkadot protocol. Again, the technical committee does not have uh, extra privileges anywhere. They can't do anything to the protocol. They can't update anything to the protocol. This is definitely not a multi-sig with pseudo permission. So technical committee is like the least powerful in the governance structures, which is established mainly for one reason. If the network needs a rescue, so a bug has been identified on the network, how do you tackle that? Technical committee is the one that mainly takes up this challenge. They will draft like a proposal, they will implement the bug fix, they'll update the code, and then push it as part of like runtime. Now the only privilege they have is to fast track a proposal. So typically a proposal referendum, if it goes for vote, it takes like 28 days on Polkadot for that to be like voted, and 28 days to get enacted. So the ones that are sent out through technical committee, they are sort of like fast tracked. So that's what their power is, and nothing more. And again, like we as Polkadot community believe that this is some form of like centralization that we have to deal with, and we solved that as well with the OpenGov upgrade. So with whatever governance that has happened so far since like Polkadot's inception in 2020, we have 113 referenda that have been brought to vote. The community has voted on them, and think of it like each referenda takes like a month for like voting. So we've had like referenda actively pushed through the referenda queue. So the council has been very active in sort of approving treasury proposals for the growth of the ecosystem. And through like all this referendum, the network has upgraded itself for more than 40 times. So this is a huge number. Excuse me. Think of like all the other blockchains out there. Think of how many times they're upgrading, and see this particular number on Polkadot. And this is not just like Polkadot that is upgrading. You also have like parachains on Polkadot, right, which are built on Substrate. Their core state transition logic is like a WASM blob. They're also like doing forkless upgrades, like on a frequent interval. So if you take Polkadot ecosystem as a whole, then we're like the most upgraded blockchain ecosystem out there, and all of that happens seamlessly. Yeah. So what are the shortcomings of current governance model? I already mentioned that to you. That there have been few centralized entities there, like council. Like we are relying heavily on the council, and the typical process of governance is very slow. So you have 1 month for voting and another month for enactment. Um, and is it like justified if like the change is like very minor, right? So if you're dealing with like simple changes like setting a threshold for becoming like I don't know, proxy, creating a proxy on the network. So if that change has to be made, you don't have to like wait so long, right? So there should be some level of priority assigned with the referendum. Of course, like changing the network's protocol, that's like a huge change. It requires a lot of discussion, a lot of time period for voting and enactment, agreed. But smaller changes like giving tips or I don't know. So any sort of like smaller weighted changes, they should have a separate track, right? So that is what OpenGov is going to introduce later on. But yeah, so one referendum up for a vote at a time, typically, because if a bug has been identified on the network, the technical committee can send a proposal which can be voted in parallel. So that is the only exception. And yeah, and then a very my favorite thing that we are dealing with in OpenGov is this decision sniping. So it happens like there were few instances where the proposal was passing till like the last few blocks when the decision has to be made, like the cutoff. At that time, people can actually switch their votes. Like if you vote yes, you can vote no. You can convert that to no before the voting period closes. So there were instances where people were like sniping the decision by switching their vote for at the last moment. Now, what happens? The 1 month work that has been done for this referendum to pass goes away. Like it's like waste of time. Decision sniping is sort of this unexpected uh, thing that you have to be mindful of when you're like passing proposals. So OpenGov takes care of this issue in a very clever manner. So I'm going to explain that in a bit. Yeah, so a lot of these central structures, Polkadot is within itself, Polkadot is demolishing them. So we have like OpenGov, which is Polkadot's next generation of decentralized governance. And this is actually next generation decentralized governance of blockchains in general. So if you take a look at blockchain governances on other ecosystems, you see that we are well ahead in terms of all the things we have thought through. So what did we do with OpenGov? We are having like multiple referenda at a time. This is great. Like I mentioned, different referenda can have like different priorities, and that brings us to multiple classes of referenda as well. So there are few referenda that are very critical for the network, and then there are a few which might have like a lesser weight when compared to the others. Dissolution of the council and the technical committee. The council is vanishing. This tiny body of representatives of the large body of token holders is disappearing, and there is a much more like decentralized solution in place, which comes through like delegations. I'll talk about it soon. But again, like technical committee, so that is being dissolved and it is being replaced by a much more like decentralized body with members who are called like fellows, or it's called fellowship as a whole. Yep, and then provisions for adaptive balancing between safety and agility. So in the blockchain space, you need safety as well as some kind of speed. So you'll have to decide some level of trade-off between these two. If you move things too fast on the network, you're at the so you're risking its security a little bit, because we want to strike a balance And this balance can be struck for the multiple classes by giving a class specific parameters. Okay, so if it is very critical to the network, maybe you should wait longer before you enact it, right? If something is not very critical for the network, you can let it like get executed like quickly, and so on and so forth. So what's changing as a dot token holder? There is no thing like public referendum. Everything is a referendum. Treasury proposals, um, any changes to the network, any changes to the network parameters, all of them are going to go through the same pipeline. So everything will be made a proposal, a referendum that will be voted on the network. So there is no concept of endorsements and like waiting queue like the current governance requires. So you're going to have people voting on multiple referenda at the same time. Okay, so you get to vote on all active referenda. There's no council, and there's no becoming a council member either. So what we have instead is the origins and tracks. So root origin is like the most powerful origin. So think of origin as a how would I put it? A government official with privileges. So root origin would be the president or the prime minister level privileges given to that particular track. So if you want changes to the network to be made, you'll put the proposal on root origin track. So if you do not do it and put it on some other track, it wouldn't have the privileges to execute that particular transaction. So similarly, like you have other tracks like small spend, mid spend proposals. So each track has its own parameters, like I mentioned. For instance, the spend proposals, they have a cap. Like when I say small spend, okay, maybe 10,000 dot is the maximum. And if you want more than that, you'll send the proposal in the medium spend track or whatever. So what's the advantage of having these multiple tracks? So you can give like multiple privileges to each and multiple parameters to each one based on that safety and agility trade-off that I was talking about. That can be done by giving those parameters. And also like we have this concept of like support and approval. So approval takes in the conviction voting into account. So this is still not changing. We want like the minority voice to be heard. So the yes or no vote weightage will still carry the conviction of the voters. But overall, like we want to see how many token issued can be part of like the voting, right? So how many of those tokens have showed up to vote on this particular proposal, and that is captured by support. And this doesn't carry conviction at all. So it's just plain like dot tokens that are out there without conviction. So how many have showed up for voting, and how many are saying yes for this proposal to pass. So like I mentioned, for any sort of proposal to referendum to be successfully passed, it has to go through these phases. So each track has its own like curves. So think of this support curve. If the referendum has to pass the moment it is put on for voting, you need like 100% of support for it, which is not very practical, right? So unless there is a very, very pressing issue that is affecting the entire Polkadot base, this is very unrealistic to expect like 100% of the voter turnout to be there. So let's say when it was put to vote, like at 0th block, 20% of voters have voted. And then this keeps going up. And this also shows that you can remove your vote anytime, right? So this is also possible. But the moment it crosses the threshold here, like, at the 20th block, it fell, or after 20 hours, that's more realistic. After 20 hours, like the support curve falls till here. So 40% of the voter base has voted on it. Now this condition is met. So the other thing is approval curve. As time goes, like we are sort of loosening the strictness of the approval that is required to pass. So you can see that it's starting at like 100. Again, like every vote has to be for passing this proposal. at some time, like, it fell down uh, below the curve, and then it crossed here, right? So this is the point where uh, the both the conditions are met, like there is enough support and there is enough approval. And now, how do we eliminate the decision sniping problem I talked about? The proposal has to run a marathon, for what's called a confirmation period. So confirmation period is highlighted in this green. So the both support and approval have to be satisfied for a significant period of time, and only then the proposal passes. So at this time, like if people are alerted, thinking like if the decision is either this way or the other way, people have chance to again like vote or change their vote or whatever. So it has to pass through this certain confirmation period. Only then it goes to like enactment. So that's the sophisticated mechanism every single track of OpenGov sort of uses. And you can see like how Polkadot is dealing with like low voter turnout, the safety thing that I talked about, the agility, as well as like decision sniping. And also, OpenGov will support agile delegation. By this, what is like, so let's say you trust someone in the community to have better judgment on a certain topic, like, the network upgrades. So if you're not technical enough to understand what's going on, you may want to like give your token weight to someone. You want to delegate your token weight to someone who can think and reason the functionality of that particular track. So there is way for you to like give that in a track specific way. So following that, again, I mentioned the technical committee is like very centralized in a way, with like just 3 entities there with the multisig. So instead you have like what's a fellowship and a whitelist origin. Both are like very cool concepts. So the fellowship itself right now has like 47 members. So think of like 47 different opinions with a weight based on the contributions they've made to the protocol. So as you can see, so Gavin Bird and Rob, who are like the founders of Polkadot, they're having like the highest rank right there with one other person. And then we have like depending on the knowledge and the contributions of they've made to the core Polkadot protocol, you have the fellowship with these ranks. And the fellowship is again like a body that follows like governance. So within fellowship, people are able to create proposals, create referenda, to sort of like elect new fellows, to sort of whitelist some calls. So let's say the network is facing an issue, we have to deploy like a solution. So fellowship is the one that kicks into action. They do the bug fix, they make that call, and then they whitelist that call. So when they whitelist that call, uh, so the curves for like whitelist track, they're much more lenient than the root origin. So the whitelist is going to have the same privileges as the root origin. It's able to like modify things on the network just the way like root does. But the only difference here is that whenever a fellowship like recommends that a proposal be passed on the whitelist origin, so the support curve drops like steeply than the root origin track. So it is possible that if there is a malicious proposal in the root origin which is being voted, you have like a whitelisted caller, the call with like these, which is like recommended by the fellowship. So they can happen simultaneously as well. So there are 100 possible referenda that can be voted on in the whitelist track, whereas in the root track only one referenda can go through. And also you have like preparing period, which is lesser than the root. You have even enactment period that is lesser than the root, which is 24 hours and 10 minutes. So this is an interesting way to put like safeguards on the network. And this is important considering that whitelisted caller can only be called through the fellowship, which are the members who have the best interests of the network on their mind. They are the core developers. And yeah. And instead of having just 3 entities define it, it's much more decentralized because the fellowship itself is kind of a democracy where you're going to, you know, from inducting new members to promoting members, all of that is done through like on-chain democracy. So just to summarize everything, so OpenGov, the new governance system on Polkadot, is going to let you as a dot token holder can vote on like multiple tracks. And there's the fellowship, which is going to send proposals through the whitelist track. You can also allocate like your dot tokens to delegates, who are going to sort of vote on your behalf with your voting power. And the decision of the referendum getting passed, it's dependent on the approval as well as like support metrics, which follow these curves. And when both of the approval and support are met for a certain amount of time, the proposal sort of passes. And OpenGov is already available on Kusama. It's running like successfully. Whatever governance statistics you saw on Polkadot for the past 3 years, Kusama did it just in 3 months. So there were 146 like referenda compared to like 111 or whatever on Polkadot in the last like 3 months. So much of governance could have happened on Polkadot if OpenGov went live earlier, but the time is coming. So we are soon going to get it on Polkadot as well. And then we're going to see a lot more like governance activity on Polkadot network. So just to summarize, like the whole referenda process, so you make a proposal. So there's an initial lead-in period, where you can vote. Someone places like a decision deposit on the referenda, and after which like we have this deciding period. So on Polkadot, it's going to be like for 28 days. So within those 28 days, if the proposal runs the marathon of this confirmation period, it has the support it needs, it has the um, approval it needs, and it runs that marathon for the confirmation period, then it gets like approved. But within the deciding period, which is 28 days, it's not able to run that marathon successfully, it's going to get rejected. And why do we need on-chain governance? If we just look at the referenda that have passed on Polkadot and Kusama, they were mainly for runtime upgrades, bug fixes, change of network parameters. So let's say we want to update the number of validators on the network from like 297, which we have right now, to 500. What do? You make that as a proposal, you make that change, put that as a code, and upload it to the chain. That gets voted on. And if it is successful, the network automatically resets that parameter. And what elegant solution can you bring on-chain governance other than this, right? So you're setting the parameters, taking it for vote. If it gets enacted, the parameters automatically change. So Polkadot also has this auctions for parachain slots. So we have that. So let's say there is an unjust slash on a validator or a network of validators due to a protocol bug. So then all the dot tokens that were backing them go to Treasury, and through on-chain governance, you can give it back to the validators and the nominators as well. So on-chain governance can be used for that, to use like rational judgment rather than just trusting the code out there. All right, so we have Treasury. We are going to need to spend the Treasury for the benefit of the network. So we need like bounties, and then we'd have to give tips for like smaller contributions. And also, how do parachains like talk to each other? So currently they need to set up like channels between each of them, and this has to be done through like on-chain governance. So right now the relay chain manages the channels between the parachains for secure communication. So that has to be made as a proposal on relay chain to do that. So like I mentioned, OpenGov has a track for each use case that you have seen before. So you have staking, treasurer, lease admin, fellowship admin. You have general admin who does like identity stuff. You have auction admin. And you, as a safety check, you need to have like a referendum canceller or referendum killer. And then for managing treasury, you have the treasurer with the highest cap. you have big spend, medium spend, small spend, and tips track or whatever. So each one is having like its own parameters, its own like approval and support curves, everything to make the governance process like seamless. So I think we are running short of time. So I'm just going to quickly show you like the pipeline of proposal. Like today, if you're trying to submit a proposal on Polkadot, you would do, so I'll show you what pre-image is if you're not familiar. So you would add a pre-image to the network. This consists of the code changes that you want to make, or this consists of the calls that you want to make. Like, so let's say I need 50,000 dot transferred to my account as from the treasury. So I make that as a call. I add that as a pre-image, and this would be for like an event or like an education initiative. So I put that proposal, and then I discuss with the community. So somehow I have to. This is just a code that says, okay, give me 50,000 dot, but I need to set the context for that. So for that, I'll discuss with the community. I'll submit the proposal with this pre-image, and then I get like endorsed to ensure like that I'm at the top of the referenda queue. And then once it goes up for vote, being a public referendum, it needs like a super majority approve. And then after that is done, it gets enacted. After 28 days, I would see 50,000 dot in my account, right? So to do whatever I'm trying to do. So submission of pre-image looks like that. You can select the palette that you want. You can select the call that you want, and provide like input for that. So in the use case that I mentioned, it would be like treasury, spend treasury or whatever, and then my address. So this corresponds to a hash. So this unique number represents this particular call, and I'm going to submit this pre-image, and then with that unique call, that hash that is submitted on chain, I'm going to submit this particular proposal, and then you can see that proposal on chain. It was proposed by technical education account, and then it's open for endorsement. So what you would do if you like the proposal of adding expect chaos to Kusama blockchain as a remark, you would go here and then sort of endorse it, and then you to endorse, like, you have to match the submission deposit of the proposer. So that's exactly what this is, 3.4 milli KSM. On Polkadot, it's like 100 dot. You need 100 dot to endorse a proposal. And then this particular proposal got like the endorsements from all these people. It eventually went into the proposal referenda queue, and then it was like up for voting. So when you're voting, you can select like the conviction, so the amount of days that you're willing to lock away your tokens. You do that, and then you say yes or no. The beauty of this is if the referenda does not go in the direction that you are planning to go, then your tokens are returned immediately. So your choice here is not, sort of enforced on the decision. Yeah, so that's the beauty of that. And then in OpenGov, it's pretty similar to what you saw just now, but removing like certain aspects. So you add pre-image, you discuss with the community, you submit the proposal in the right track. So currently there is only one track. So instead you'll pick and choose like the right track for your proposal. So some decision deposit needs to be added for it to get voted on, and that getting counted for the confirmation period. It goes for vote, and then it gets enacted after approval. So typically, if you try to submit like an OpenGov proposal on Kusama, along with the pre-image hash, like the call that you want to make, you also have to specify the submission track. So you have to select the root track or the track that can execute like this particular call. You can also say like how many what time this proposal can get enacted. So that's there, and then you do the submission deposit and you submit the proposal. So voting on OpenGov referendum, it's yes or no, or a split, or abstain. So there's a reason for that. I told you support sort of encapsulates the voter turnout, right? So at some on some like referenda, you just want to abstain from voting. So that's when your vote is counted as part of like support, but it doesn't count towards like approval. So this is just to ensure that the support curve condition is met. So you're ambivalent about like what the output is, but you're abstaining from it. So there is also a way to split your vote. So if you're having double thoughts, okay, 70% I just want to say yes, 30% I'm not convinced about this. So let the network decide. Others decide like what they're going to do with their tokens. So there's a way for you to split that as well. So think of all the sophistication in making your voice heard with the right amount of like conviction, right amount of like thought process. All of that is being taken care of in this OpenGov. So how do you generate discussions in the community? You have like Polkadot and Kusama direction channels. This is a snapshot of today. So Polkadot direction, everything discussed about like governance. So every single proposal that is out there, you discuss that here. There's also like discussion forums on Polka Assembly, Subsquare. So there's also like Polkadot forum and social media. So these are the avenues where you let the community know like what your intention is and open it for dialogue. Again, like Polkadot forum, it's the place where the ecosystem like hangs out. There's a governance section specifically out there. You can also see there's a active analysis of what's happening on Kusama Treasury right now. So if you go to Polkadot forum, none of this will be useful if the user experience of governance participation is not that good. So for that, we are certainly like taking care of it. For those of you who have staked on Polkadot before, compared to like now with the staking dashboard, you can see a similar tool for governance as well, which makes it very intuitive for you to like vote, for you to delegate people, and participate in the discussions and so on and so forth. So we also would see governance support added to like Polkadot, your favorite Polkadot wallets that you're using. So they're going to get like governance updates. You also will benefit from governance analytics, showing, okay, so there's this much amount of tokens left in the treasury, and these are the proposals. Which one should take a priority? So, or we have spent so much on a certain aspect already, we would want to spend on this aspect. So analytics like these are going to improve like the user experience, and also the delegations, like track specific delegations. If you make the life easy by showing profiles of the delegates, how much active they are in the ecosystem, what kind of decisions they made. If there is like an interface that shows you all details, it gives you a better information on which who to sort of delegate your token power to. And governance, it's not just restricted to like Polkadot. Even parachains can choose to include the governance palette, the OpenGov palette, and then sort of run the same thing. You can find the discussions on governance related to these parachains on Polka Assembly if you'd like to. And yeah, so with that, I conclude today's talk. I think I'm right on time. There may be a few questions or a lot of questions, but I'm going to stop right here. And I hope you took away something from today's presentation regarding like governance on Polkadot. What were the challenges and how we are like tackling them with like OpenGov. All right, I'm going to stop right here. All right, so I see like 4 questions. Can your voting power go down? What if your tokens are already currently used? That's the beauty of like governance on Polkadot. With the tokens that you have, you can vote on multiple proposals on multiple tracks. So it doesn't restrict you. If you choose to like vote to a certain proposal, it doesn't mean that it's just like locked away on that. Okay, so maybe I missed this, but can fellows be voted out of being a fellow? Yes. So fellowship is like a body that's on chain. So fellowship has its own like governance. There's a way for you to for fellows to sort of promote or demote them. And again, like being on chain, if you want to eliminate like a fellow through governance, through like a public proposal, that's also possible. So yeah, so having everything on chain makes it like possible for this sort of thing to happen. Can we have access to the slides? Yes, I'm going to share it like right now in chat. So let's. And then finally, is WASM the equivalent of the EVM for Polkadot? Great question. So WASM is more than like EVM. WASM is much more like so EVM smart contracts. Fine. So WASM is capable of taking like any sort of logic, and it's almost like a virtual machine that's going to execute it much efficiently than EVM. Yep, that's all I have here, and happy to answer more questions. Can you send the Polkadot education bundles? So Polkadot education bundle, I don't know if you're referring to what I mentioned in the education initiatives in my talk in India. So we are preparing them. So we want to. So there is the Web3 Foundation courses that we have on like edX, which so we plan to like release like two more courses, one on Rust programming and the other one on Substrate. So this will be by the summer, and then the next step would be creating these education bundles that we can give out to like blockchain groups, or university professors, so that they can sort of create like this university level course where they teach all the principles of blockchain, Web3, assigned cryptography, Polkadot, building on Substrate, Rust, and so on.
Thank you so much, though, and thank you for taking the questions while I was like struggling in and out.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much for the amazing talk. I think that was so in depth, and I'd like to speak for everyone that I learned a lot.
Okay.
So if people would like to contact you afterwards, is Twitter the best way?
Yep, Twitter is fine. I think I'm available. So Radha at Web3 Foundation, or
Oh, amazing.
LinkedIn, Radhakrishna Dasari. You can add me there. You can ask questions. I've already like taken a lot of questions on LinkedIn.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
yeah, feel free to reach out to me anywhere, like on Element or yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much again. Oh, like wonderful. It was an hour, but we learned so much. Thank you everyone for coming. It was great to see people here and engaged. And yeah, I guess we have one more session left in this Educate series, and that will be on Thursday. And so I hope you guys tune in then. Thank you again, Radha, for coming in. And with that, I will end the session now.
Okay, thank you very much.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.